What's up, party people? It's Chris with ProPhoto. Welcome to Geared Up. This is our weekly live broadcast where we talk about gear, lighting techniques. We talk about, we break things down. We try to figure out how things work. We talk about technical stuff. We try to have fun, playing with light, learning something new, and just doing it here and hanging out, having fun, and taking your questions. Today, we're talking about controlling highlights. So I know here you can see behind me, let's go. We have this beautiful, oh, I think I'm still blocking it. Are we good now? There we go. We have an electric guitar. So today we're going to be talking about controlling highlights. First, we're going to talk about highlights in general, but a good way of doing that is going to be with something like this guitar, something with a lot of contours, and something that's also a high gloss finish. So it's high gloss, just if you don't know, just means that it's really shiny. So we're going to talk about the gear that we're going to use. We're going to talk about how we're making images. But first, let's talk about reflections for a second. So there are two types of reflections. There are direct reflections or specular reflections, and then there are diffuse reflections. Now, we're not talking about the light source themselves. So a lot of people think about a specular light, and they think about hard light. They think about like sharp highlights and stuff like that, like highlights within like the light itself. We're not talking about the light itself. So we're talking about the actual reflection. And the reflection doesn't care what kind of light you're using. So it's just what kind of light is being reflected. Cool? So a diffuse reflection would be like light hitting this reflector right here. So it's even side to side. So like if you were kind of just to look at it. Now I take it back. This has like a hint of a sheen. Let's get a little more technical with it. Let's grab this V flat. So I know I'm going to knock something over here in a second. So this V flat, for example, is a diffused reflection. The light coming off of it at every single angle is going to look the exact same, no matter where you shoot it from. That's the kind of cool thing about a diffused reflection. Like I said, I'm going to wind up bumping stuff. But no matter where you photograph this diffused reflection, this V flat, no matter where you're photographing it from, the light is going to be coming off of it the same way. That's not the case with a specular highlight. So the specular highlight, the angle that the light hits the subject is the angle that the light's going to come off of it. So depending on how your camera's set up, it's going to capture more or less of the highlight. It's going to get more or less of the hot spot depending on kind of the angle of your camera. There's some other stuff that we're going to talk about on a later day, especially when it comes to controlling some more types of reflections and things like sunglasses and stuff like that. We're going to have a whole dive into that itself. But it's called angle of incidence, in case you were wondering. So depending on how you have your camera set up with a specular reflection is going to change the intensity of that light. So we're going to talk about controlling those reflections and how light shaper selection will help you with that kind of stuff. So some other things to think about too, whenever if you're a portrait photographer, how does this apply to being a portrait photographer? For the most part, our skin is diffused. Now, if you have some sort of like maybe you're shooting some active wear, or you're shooting some sort of sport, and maybe you put some glycerin on the person, or maybe they're just naturally sweating from what it is that they're doing, that would start to become specular. You're going to start to get some of those highlights that actually kind of put specular reflections back out there. Some things to think about. But for the most part, me here in this room that's air conditioned, my skin is diffused. So the upside for that is you could photograph me with a specular light. It would look quite nice. And the light that comes off of it will be diffused, or the reflection that comes back and hits the camera is going to be diffused, which is really, really cool. Now, something like this guitar or a car, for example, that's going to be, again, a more specular reflection, and we need to control some of that stuff. So the cool thing, again, like I was saying with the specular reflection, where you photograph from is going to change the intensity. We don't want that to happen. We want the specularity to be pretty even. So what we're going to do is we're going to photograph that with diffused light. What we have set up here today, and let's just talk about gear for a second. We have, I kind of have a mixture of lights just because it's kind of what I had on stands. I felt like just throwing it in there. So I have a Pro D3 right there. It's running through the new softbox 1x4, the collapsible ones. All the softboxes that we're using are the new collapsibles. Then I have a B10X Plus over here, 500-watt light. Same thing, 1x4. And then the 2x3 up high here with the B10. And then in the background, if I go here for you, see if you can see this. That pop up for you. So right here, you're going to notice we have a B10 down low. We're going to just play around the background. We're gonna keep the background a nice gray. And we're also going to throw this light on and see how it looks if we go with something a little more high key. So cool. Let's get you back over here. Perfect. So again, 2x3, 1x4, 1x4, D3, B10s all around the house. And just for the record, I have an A2 set right here. I'm going to show you a specular light, making a specular reflection on this, just so you can kind of see what it is that we are talking about. It is not, I haven't set it to its channel just yet, but kind of like last minute before we went, I was like, oh, you know, it'd be really great if I shot a specular light. So we'll do that. We'll probably just change channels just to make it easy so I don't mess kind of with the settings here, but we can talk about kind of that specular reflection. So the cool thing about the 1x4s, what they're going to allow us to do, because the light's coming out diffused, it's going to fill more of the shiny specular, the direct reflective, kind of that shiny reflective material of the paint on the guitar. And what that's going to allow for is for us to get those targeted reflections that a direct reflection does, but it's going to be giving it to us from multiple locations. That's kind of the cool thing about what the diffuse is doing. It's taking all that light, it's bouncing it in at a ton of different directions, and it's coming back at the camera in a more even tone. So we're going to get some nice highlights. You're not going to see any, super hard pinpoint lights coming from any particular direction. It's really a cool thing when you start to understand how reflections work. So let's actually first, I'm going to flip everything over for the A2, and let's take a direct reflected light. So let's flip this A2 on. I'm trying to keep it about the same height as the body of the guitar. That way we can just hopefully get the most light on it. I'm trying to also keep it within the angle of incidence of the camera so you actually get a better idea of the highlight. I may have to move it if I missed by a little bit, but I don't think that I did. So let's just get this set here. Perfect. And then let's change my Connect Pro. So camera-wise, what are we using? We have a GFX 100S, not the S2, the 100S. Love this little camera. Using the 110 millimeter lens, which works out to a full frame about 85. ISO 100, f8, 125th of a second. And we're lighting everything through Connect Pro. So here we go. This is just the A2. Let's put it in auto mode. Let's just put it in TTL mode just because I don't know that I have it set correctly. So, oh, you know what I didn't do? I did not flip you over here to see this. Let's do this. Super source will be good. Perfect. So with the direct light, what we're getting here, you can see kind of like these super hard like light spots, these bright spots right here. And because this guitar is not flat, it's got some contour to it, you're getting it kind of in multiple locations. And so that light's just going to come off in a different way. It's fine. Now, I think the thing that can happen a lot of times is people will say, oh, this is the way that you should photograph something. I don't subscribe to that. I think that lighting is personal. I think your style is personal. But I do think it's important to understand why things work the way that they work so that you can break those rules, right? So that's what we're talking about today. So we're just understanding the rules. We're understanding how things work. And then if you decide that you like the look, like, for example, I'm going to shout out my buddy Andy Lee. He is a fantastic food photographer here in the Atlanta, Georgia area. And I love his hard light style on like specular glasses and things like that, things that you would, in the past, if you were trying to be technical, would shoot with more of a diffused setup, so you're kind of wrapping the light around it. But man, his stuff is just so dynamite. So big shout out to my boy Andy Lee. Love everything that you're doing, man. So understand what things do, and then decide what your style is and break it. So cool stuff. So now what we're going to do is we're going to see the difference between, I'm going to turn this off too, just so we can kind of see just these two lights and understand how, or actually, you know what we might do? Let's just turn on the strip box coming from the same direction so we can A/B it. So let's get here to, back up to channel 1, and we are ABC, so let's turn off everything else. Oh, you know what? I made a boo-boo. Yep, made a boo-boo. We'll sort it out here as we go. So let's just go to group C. Let's turn off everything else. I do believe I was at roughly a power level of 6. So let's go there. We'll see. We'll play it out. So here we go, 3, 2. I love that I'm counting down my guitar like it's going to move. It's just a creature of habit, I guess. So the difference between the two, let's go here. And let me just, I'm going to pull up just the computer so you can see kind of what we're talking about. So now we have this diffuse light that's sending reflections out in all sorts of directions, right? So we're getting this nice even line here that's filled, top to bottom. Again, that's what diffusion does, is it evens out the light. So we're getting this nice, beautiful, even highlight right down the side here. Whereas with the specular light onto a specular material, we're getting specular reflections. We are getting hard bops of light off certain points. And again, if I were to change my camera angle over here, let me go to something that maybe you can see my pointer a little better. If I was to change my camera angle a little bit more, these reflections are going to move. They're going to move. They're going to be brighter. Like this spot may not be as bright anymore. It might be brighter over here, just depending on how that light caught that. Whereas here, if I move my camera with this reflection, with this diffused reflection right here, or I'm sorry, with this diffused light hitting this direct reflection, which is giving us more of a diffused reflection, word salad, I can move that camera anywhere and I can still get the same exposure that that light is bringing to me. Cool. So we're lighting a guitar today. Someone asked me to light guitars. Luckily, I played music for a long time back in my punk rock days, and so this is my axe that I used to wield on stage. So now let's start adding in other lights and see what we're getting. So let's bring in the second light over here, this other light. Let's see what we got. So now we've started to bring in a second light, and what that's going to allow us to do is evenly light the guitar all the way around. We're getting, oh, you know what I didn't do this, so you can't actually see what I just did. There we go. So that second light has now given us that same diffused reflection that we were getting from over here off of this shiny guitar, but now because the diffused light is giving us a lot of reflections off a lot of different, a lot of light reflecting multiple different ways, we're getting all that kind of diffused reflection. We're getting it on this side too. So the nice thing about this is we have even highlights, and we can use light position to dictate how much contour we show on the guitar itself. So I could technically pull these, not technically, I could absolutely pull these soft boxes forward so that they are actually ahead of the guitar itself. And if I took that shot again, we're going to see less contour because we're getting more light wrap. So here we go. So we go. So with that, we lost the contour of the guitar. Still absolutely diffused. It's an even light top to bottom. It's definitely blown out a little bit, but that light is even top to bottom. And then as we start to push the lights back again and lighting different portions of it, we can actually start to bring in more or less contour to the unit itself while maintaining that light wrap so beautifully. So there we go. So we pushed it back a little bit. We could go even further if we wanted to and just barely light the edges of it. And so this is where lighting position is really cool. The nice thing about having big softboxes, again, we're wrapping, we're bringing light from lots of different directions. But what this allows us to do is it still gives us more ability to wrap some more light so we can play with the position. I know that I've goofed around with this a little bit, so I kind of know where I want to be, but there you go. So you push it back a little bit further, so the light's skipping a little bit more. So that's going to add more contour, but we're also going to drop in exposure because we're not getting quite as much light on it. Still a really cool image if that's what it is that you're going for. Me personally, I like it about halfway in between. Actually, maybe not even halfway in between. Maybe like a quarter of the, it might be about half now that I'm looking at it from here. I think when you look at it from the front, you feel like you're not quite as wrapped around. So this is where I like it. So we have a nice combination of even diffused lights. You know what, actually I take it back. I think I want to push it a little bit. I want to see a little bit more of the concave design here, and I need a little bit less light hitting the front. So maybe it was about a quarter of the way forward. So there's like a little hair of the front of the softbox showing. So there we go. I'm happier with that. So the cool thing about this is we have this beautiful highlight. We're really showing off the guitar. What we lose is we lose the machine head up here that actually has the decal of the guitar maker itself. So that's what the third light up high is for. Again, we're staying with the softbox because the machine head of the guitar is the same paint as the body of the guitar, so highly reflective. So let's go here. Actually do know what this was set at earlier, so because I wasn't happy with it earlier. There we go, 3, 2. So now, bringing in that light from the top, we have a nicely lit machine head, which is very, very, very cool. Now, again, I'm not going to zoom in on the guitar because then you can see how I haven't polished any of my hardware in a while. It's been sitting in a box. I feel bad I've been neglecting it. But we're able to light it top to bottom. So another thing to think about, when we were talking about diffused reflections and we were talking about direct reflections, we were talking about in a perfect world, right? So if the thing that you're photographing is perfectly one thing or the other, generally things aren't. Me, for example, when I was talking about diffused skin, yeah, skin might be a little diffused, but maybe someone's face is a little oily. So you can either, one, blot some of that oil off, or just understand that things aren't always 100% one way or the other. This guitar is a prime example of that. So the body of the guitar, the hardware itself, the electronics, the pickups, the tuning keys, or the tuning keys and the machine head itself, those are all direct reflections. They are specular reflections. They give back pinpoint light sources. It's a mirror image for the most part. The actual fretboard itself is not. It's diffused. So if we were to photograph, and I see some comments over there, I'll check it out. Or if someone's just saying hi. Let's see. Oh, love the PRS, love the Pro D3. Thank you. This was the PRS, Paul Reed Smith, for anybody who doesn't know much about guitars. It's just a guitar manufacturer. This was my I sold a Les Paul at one point, and I regretted it ever since. And I swore that no matter what, even if I never played it anymore, I'd never get rid of it. So this has been my, like I said, I used to, back in my punk rock days. But because the fretboard is also diffused, this is what I'm talking about. You're not going to be in a world, for the most part, where you're going to get one full thing or the other full thing. Same thing if you're photographing a car, for example, a car that's high gloss, you're still going to have certain parts of the car that maybe have like a plastic fender flare or something like that. So understand what it is that you're going for, but know that most things aren't always 100% one way or the other. So the cool thing is I could photograph the fretboard with this A2, and because the light coming off of it is diffused, because it's hitting a diffused material and reflecting back in a diffused way, it's going to be even, which is kind of a cool thing to think about. So depending on what you're shooting with light-wise, or what you're photographing, will dictate how those reflections come back. So something also to keep in mind whenever you're doing those things. Lost my train of thought for half a second. But again, the 1x4s are giving us a nice highlight, and that's giving us, let me see if we have any questions, or if it was just PRS love and Pro D3 love. It is. Oh, it's Eric with the PRS. What's up, brother? So again, it's not a super hard concept to understand. It's just simply knowing what type of reflection is what. Again, you hear the word specular thrown around a lot. People are generally always talking about a hard light. The reflection doesn't care what kind of light you're shooting with. So it's just what kind of material are you photographing and how is that light coming back off of the substrate into your camera, right? So again, specular means direct, like a mirror. We're talking about the reflection. The best way to combat that is going to be with a diffused light source. That's going to give you a lot of light coming from a lot of different directions. That's what diffusion does, is it takes all the light, it kind of focuses it, it evens it out. But because this softbox is much bigger than the actual, or it's about the same size as the guitar, but really what we're looking at is the body, because this softbox is so much bigger than the body of the guitar. We're getting light from all sorts of directions, and what that's doing, all those specular highlights are hitting in different directions, and it's sending that back out to the camera, and the camera just sees all the reflections. So it's this nice, beautiful highlight, this nice, beautiful contour. Yeah, we have it up there so you can see it. So shooting something specular with a specular reflection or a shiny reflection, really, really good to use a diffused light source. And that is why. Now, if you're shooting something diffused, you could use a hard light source and shoot that. And that's going to also kind of give you that diffused light source back. So it's, again, just understanding what you're photographing, understanding what you're trying to achieve, and kind of just looking at your subject and making that decision on the fly. Let me see if I have any questions. Again, it's not super hard to go through, at least. Oh, someone's asking me if I'm using a circular polarizing. I'm not using a circular polarizer. I don't have the lights polarized, so I was planning on getting into a conversation down the road about polarize. So you can control your light by, you can also control reflections with polarization. You can put a polarizer filter over your flash, and then you could circular polarize it out, depending on how you want to do it. But no, I'm not using a circular polarizer lens. This is just straight on in into the camera. And then again, that highlight's being created by the softbox itself. Any other things? Cool. I don't see any other questions. What are we looking at like on time? Oh, we're doing good. We're doing super good on time. So again, just talking about highlights, how to control them, what is it you're looking for in the first place, and whatnot. So I don't actually see any more questions, so I'm not going to keep beating this drum. Again, if you would, I'm just do a quick little gear rundown in case anybody has any questions with this stuff. We have the 1x4s as our side highlights. These are the new soft boxes, the ones that fold. D3s, B10 plus, B10. Oh, you know what we didn't do? Let's just throw on the background light just to see what that looks like. And I know playing around with that earlier, I needed roughly 9. So here we go. So that if you want to, if you want something a little more high key, the cool thing about the kind of the way that we're lighting this is we still are able to maintain a lot of the contour of the edges of the light, even though we have that high key light coming from the background. And we could probably pull that back a little bit. Let's do that. Cool. Yeah, we can pull that back a little bit, and that looks really, really nice. And then we could, we have some room to play around with it and brighten it up and whatnot if we feel like we need to. But you can have all kinds of fun with this stuff. That was just something I wanted to add in there at the end because I was thinking, oh, it'd be nice to light the background white and kind of do this whole high key looking thing. So, but again, diffuse modifiers to control specular reflections. It's as easy as that. 1x4s are really, really good just because they give us some more control side to side, and we have a lot more wrap up and down. And then this right here, again, was just to highlight the machine head. There's really nothing else other than that. The light coming down and hitting around here probably isn't enough to change the exposure that much. So let me see if there's anything else. It doesn't look like it. So hopefully you guys have an awesome rest of your week. Next week I'm live in Sweden. I'll be in Sweden next week. So I know Kate will be running the stuff from here. We'll be kind of patched in that way. And then I'll be doing a live from Sweden. We'll be talking about Fresnel's next week. So hopefully you'll come tune in, check it out, see what we have going on. If you have any questions, let me put this up. I always want to make sure that you have this. There's some people in my DMs right now that I've got to get back to. It's been a little bit of a hectic It's been a little bit of a hectic week, but I haven't forgotten about you. Here's my Instagram handle. Best way to get in touch with me, shoot me a DM if you have any questions, anything that you want to see, anything you don't understand. Maybe I need to clarify something, and we can chat. So at TheChrisFane, you can find me on Instagram. I mean, if you're on X, you can hit me up there too. Pretty much all my handles are TheChrisFane. So hopefully that helps you out a whole bunch there, and we can chat. I love speaking with everybody. I want to double check how is the guitar secured behind the machine head. So this was a lot of angst for me in the beginning. So initially, I would just kind of put some gaff tape back behind it. I had someone here on standby in case things went a little crazy. And I got to thinking about it a little bit more. I was like, oh, you know what I can do? I can use fishing line. So I just used some fishing line, and I crisscrossed back behind these two tuning keys. And there's a little bit of a gap between the tuning keys where they connect to the machine head. So it's just crisscrossed back there and tied off to a grip arm with something to hold onto the fishing line back there behind. So that's how it's done. It's held on with fishing line. So it's actually not going anywhere, which is nice. Although I start twisting and it freaks me out a little bit. But no, it's held up with fishing line, just crisscrossed behind the machine head. I don't really have a good way of like showing that to you because let's see. Yeah, take my word for it. Fishing line crisscrossed around the back, but that's how I'm holding it up on the machine head. Cool. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to DM me at TheChrisFane. We'll chat about it. Thank you all so much for tuning in, and I hope you have an awesome rest of your week. See you later, everybody.